My name is Wendy Morgan, and 12 days before my baby sister's wedding, my mother sent me a text message that made me feel an eerie, absolute sense of calm. The message read, "You are not coming to the wedding. This family does not want you there." Exactly 3 seconds later, my father sent his own brutal addition. "You make us look low class just by being there." I was sitting at my office desk when the screen lit up, with the heavy leather planner for Vivian's wedding lying open right in front of me. 8 months of absolute dedication, $26,000 of my own hard-earned money, and every single vendor contract signed in my own name with the very same Mont Blanc fountain pen Vivian had gifted me for my 30th birthday. I just stared at the ink. I read those words twice, letting them sink in. I actually smiled before typing back 4 simple words. "So, you are choosing status over blood." Then, I picked up my landline and made 18 phone calls in less than 40 minutes. You see, there was one crucial detail my mother completely forgot when she decided to exile me. I was the one who paid for everything. The venue, the florist, the caterer, the disc jockey, the photographer, and even that cascading wisteria arch she insisted on. What I did next at a local Holiday Inn ballroom 12 days later, right in front of the elite Ashford family, was something none of them saw coming. Trust me, if you have ever been cast aside just so your family could look good for high society, this is for you. Go ahead and leave a comment with the word receipts if you have ever had to use actual documentation to prove your worth to people who share your DNA. What went down at that Holiday Inn ballroom is a story I still tell a whole year later. My business is a small boutique event planning company named Westbrook Events. I used my middle name because when I was 20 years old and made the choice to drop out of Cal State Sacramento, my father looked me dead in the eye at our kitchen table and told me I would never build anything worthy of our family name. My mother just sat there, quietly nodding. Right then, I decided, fine, I will just build my own legacy under a different name. That conversation was 12 years ago. Today, Westbrook Events has 4 employees. We do reliable, mid-tier weddings and corporate retreats in Sacramento. We are not glamorous, but local vendors know my voice on the phone. 8 months before that text arrived, my sister Vivian called me sobbing. She had just gotten engaged to Trent Ashford, and our mother had immediately hijacked the planning. Vivian wanted a simple ceremony, but my mother demanded a lavish reception at Cresthaven Manor with expensive imported orchids. Seeing Vivian completely overwhelmed, I made her an offer. I would handle every vendor personally, using my industry connections to get pricing no ordinary client could ever dream of. My plan was simple. I would put every single charge on my business credit card and settle the bill with our parents later, making this my grand wedding gift to Vivian. She cried happy tears, hugged me tightly, and told me I was the greatest sister in the entire world. What followed was 8 months of thick binders, weekend food tastings, and rushing fabric swatches to her salon appointments so she could approve them between clients. Every contract, deposit, and customized detail passed through my hands. I uncapped my fountain pen, signed my name, and closed the binder, never once questioning the legal weight of those signatures. Not until 12 days before the big day, when my mother cast me out. The message hit my screen on a Tuesday afternoon at exactly 3:47. I remember the precise minute because I was in the middle of a call with the linen supplier arguing over tablecloth counts. When my phone buzzed, I glanced down and saw my mother's name. I politely paused the call, promising to ring them back in 10 minutes, a call I never actually made. I read her text first. Then I read my father's follow-up. I read them over and over, wondering if my eyes were playing tricks on me. You are not coming to the wedding. This family does not want you there. You make us look low class just by being there. For about 4 seconds, my mind went completely blank. Then came a feeling that was not sadness or rage. No, it was something far colder and crystal clear. It felt like that sudden heavy silence in a room when a dripping faucet finally stops. Hannah looked up from her computer monitor. She is 27 years old and has worked alongside me for 4 years, meaning she can read my micro-expressions better than my own family ever could. She asked me what was wrong, but I could not bring myself to speak just yet. I silently turned my phone around and slid it across the wooden desk toward her. She read the screen, then reread it, her jaw tight. Without a word, she reached out and slowly closed her laptop. I picked up my phone, typed, "So, you are choosing status over blood?" and hit send. It was time to open the binder. I began dialing the first number on my list entirely from memory because I had a massive $26,000 wedding to systematically dismantle. To truly comprehend why my mother sent those texts, we have to look back at the engagement party. 4 months earlier, the Ashfords hosted a dinner at their exclusive country club. They represent old-school Sacramento real estate, spanning 4 generations of wealth. Crucially, they are the type of quiet elite who never boast about their status, preferring to discuss normal things like local public schools. My mother, on the other hand, had been desperately putting on a show. She wore a brand new designer dress and her prized pearl pin reserved only for important events. My mother had literally practiced her elegant wave in the mirror before we left. I drove myself to the club, wearing a simple navy dress I had owned for years, which made me the only person in the room not sporting a brand new outfit. Beatrice Ashford was the very first person to approach me. She is in her early 60s, exceptionally elegant with neatly cut silver hair. She walked right past my mother, who was busy fussing with her designer clutch, and introduced herself to me. She told me Trent had mentioned my company and began asking incredibly detailed, intelligent questions about how I managed seasonal cash flow, handled event staffing, and maintained solid vendor relations in Sacramento. Beatrice was the first person in 5 years to show real interest in my business. Across the room, I caught my mother watching us, her pearl pin glinting under the heavy chandelier. Her face wore a strange, tight look I could not decipher. My Aunt Marjorie quickly stepped up, cupped my mother's elbow, and whispered something in her ear before guiding her to the bar. At the end of the evening, Beatrice put a gentle hand on my arm and told me I was impressive, adding that Vivian was incredibly lucky to have me as a sister. I drove home thinking everything had gone beautifully, having no clue that I had just sparked a 4-month spiral of panic in my mother's insecure mind. Hannah broke the silence, asking me carefully if we were canceling the wedding. I looked up from the binder and told her that we were simply canceling the vendors. Whether a wedding actually happened was entirely between my mother and the Ashfords, but I certainly was not going to fund it anymore. She nodded, asking me to walk her through the contracts. I flipped to the master index. 18 separate vendors in total. Cresthaven Manor for the gorgeous venue, Maison Beaumont for the gourmet catering, Catalina Blooms for the florals, Riley Bennett for the music, along with 2 professional photographers, the cake, the transportation, linens, the lighting, and the string quartet. Every single agreement listed my name as the primary client, and every auto draft was linked to my business credit card. 8 months ago, my mother had insisted on this setup under the guise of securing industry discounts. In reality, she just did not want to deal with the messy logistics and wanted to focus solely on playing the elegant mother of the bride. I had agreed, genuinely believing it was a beautiful gift to my sister. I laid my pen on the legal pad as Hannah cleared her schedule. Together, we drafted a precise checklist of vendor names, forfeited deposits, canceled final payments, and confirmation tracking. The cap of my fountain pen clicked shut with a sharp, final sound. I looked at Hannah, and she looked back at me, ready for battle. I told her my mother would likely call in about 40 minutes, so we needed to cancel the first 8 major vendors before she realized what was happening. Hannah immediately picked up her receiver, volunteering to take the florals and transportation while I tackled the venue and catering. I dialed Catalina Blooms, and she answered on the second ring. When I told her I needed to cancel the entire Morgan and Ashford wedding order immediately, she went silent. We had worked together for 6 years, and I had sent her easily $90,000 in client business, making her one of my most trusted partners. Catalina asked if I was all right, and I calmly told her I was fine, but I needed the written cancellation within the hour. I accepted forfeiting my $4,200 deposit and instructed her to void the remaining $7,800 balance scheduled for the 5th. She agreed instantly, asking no further questions. As a professional, she knew when to stay silent. The confirmation email hit my inbox 4 minutes later, and I officially crossed her off with my fountain pen. Next, I rang Maison Beaumont. The exact same conversation ended with $2,000 forfeited and $9,400 saved. 7 minutes later, they were crossed off too. Then came Riley. Have you ever had to undo months of hard work in a matter of minutes? That was me, sitting at my desk with a heavy heart. He refunded the entire deposit because he was on call that night anyway and could easily rebook. One dark line through Riley Bennett. Next, the transportation company voided in 3 minutes. The string quartet refunded in full at my request. The cake was the only one that really hurt. It was custom, and the baker had already milled the lavender for the buttercream. I asked her to keep the batch and the design notes for an upcoming client, and she agreed. $300 forfeited, $1,800 voided. 11 lines through 11 vendors in 26 minutes. My Mont Blanc pen felt warm in my grip as I crossed out the orchids. Low class. Yeah, right. Low class does not know the cancellation clause, I said. Hannah looked up at me from her desk. She did not laugh, but I saw her tense shoulders finally relax. We still had 7 vendors left to go. My phone started lighting up around 4:22 with the first call from my mother. I ignored it. The second came, ignored. The third went to voicemail and I did not listen. When the 4th and 5th calls came in back-to-back at 4:31, I turned the ringer off completely. I refused to lose focus. While Hannah worked on the transportation and lighting crew, I picked up the next contract. At 4:36, a text from Vivian lit up the screen saying, "Wendy, please pick up. Mom says you are being dramatic. Please." I read the message, set the phone face down, and did not reply. Hannah watched me closely. "Vivian?" she asked. "Yes, Vivian," I confirmed. Mom told her I am being dramatic. What did the text say? Mom probably has not told her what she actually wrote, I said. She told Vivian I am having some kind of meltdown. Hannah nodded, not pushing it, and handed me the rental lines and confirmation already canceled. I drew the line. At 4:41, my mother left a voicemail. My screen showed the duration as 2 minutes and 11 seconds, but I did not play it. Then the text started rolling in from my mother, Aunt Marjorie, and finally my dad at 4:53 saying, "Wendy, your mother is upset. Call her back." I did not call him back. And I did not call her. I had Cresthaven Manor to cancel, and I wanted to do that one in person. But I could not wait. I checked the binder. The venue contract was at the front. $18,000 in total was scheduled to auto-draft Friday morning as the final payment, with a $4,000 deposit forfeit upon cancellation. I picked up the phone and dialed the direct line to Eric, the venue manager. I had $18,000 to pull back from the brink. Eric picked up on the first ring. "Wendy, tell me good news." "Eric, I am canceling the Morgan Ashford wedding. Full cancellation tonight." He was quiet for 2 seconds. "Wendy, the deposit is $4,000. The final 18 is set to draft Friday." "Confirm," I told him. "Refund the $18,000 to the card on file. I want the cancellation email tonight." Eric took a heavy breath on the other end of the line. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly. "I am sure, Wendy." "You realize what this means for them, right? We are only 11 days out from the date." "I realize, Eric," I replied coldly. "They have 11 days. Meanwhile, I have a checkbook with 3 blank weeks of capacity. Just send the email." He did. It arrived 16 minutes later. The subject line read, "Cresthaven Manor Cancellation Confirmation." The text confirmed a refund of $18,000 was processed to my Westbrook Events business card, ending in 4482, with the $4,000 deposit officially forfeited. I drew a final line through Cresthaven with my Mont Blanc. The binder had only 4 vendors left, which I would handle in the morning. Leaning back in my chair, I looked out the window. It was Sacramento at 5:15 on a Tuesday in early September, and the light was the color of weak tea. Hannah looked over at me. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it for a second. "Like I just paid the cheapest therapy bill of my life," I said. "And listen, let me speak directly to you for a second. If you are still watching, you might be doing the math on what I just did, wondering why I would willingly lose $4,000 to a venue I could have used. Let me tell you what I learned when I was 22. That was the year my father told me my last name was not worth a tuition. Losing $4,000 to walk away from people who tell you that you make them look low class is the cheapest therapy money can buy. If you have ever signed a check just to free yourself, drop the words "cheapest therapy" in the comments and subscribe, because the Holiday Inn part is coming and I am not skipping any of it. My mother showed up at my office at 6:04. I had told Hannah to go home at 5:45. She had not wanted to leave, but I insisted. There was no reason for her to be here for what was coming. The front bell jingled. My mother walked in, wearing her pearl pin, careful makeup, and her business dress. I did not stand up. I did not close the binder, and I did not put my Mont Blanc away. "Hi, Mom," I said. "Wendy, this has gone on long enough," she began. She tried warmth first. "Honey, sit and talk to me." "I am sitting," I replied. Then she tried cold. "You have embarrassed your family. You have embarrassed yourself." "Have I?" I asked. She tried tears, the real-looking ones she is so good at when she needs something. I did not move. "Mom, every vendor I contracted for Vivian's wedding has been informed today. 8 of them have already confirmed cancellation in writing. The remaining 10 will be done by tomorrow morning. Cresthaven Manor has already released the date. The Ashfords no longer have a reception venue," I said flatly. The blood drained from her face in 2 distinct waves, first from around her mouth, and then from around her eyes. "You are lying," she whispered. "I am not lying," I replied. "Eric at Cresthaven already sent the cancellation email. You can call him yourself if you do not believe me." She tried to speak, but her lips just parted and nothing came out. I tilted my head slightly. "I mean, I would understand if you would rather not call him. After all, low-class people do not usually have a personal line to luxury venue managers, so I am not sure why you would want to call Eric anyway." Her eyes fluttered closed for just a second, and I leaned in, keeping my voice almost gentle. "But low-class people apparently do not get invited to weddings, so I am not sure why you are here at all." She left without saying another word. I watched my mother through the office window after she walked out. She reached her car, stood in the parking lot for 30 seconds, then yanked her phone out of her purse and started dialing. I could not hear her, but I could see her shoulders. I could see the way she paced and gestured with her left hand, her pearl pin catching the parking lot lamp. I knew exactly who was on the other end of that phone call. Aunt Marjorie. Marjorie is my mother's older sister, 55, divorced twice, and she never recovered financially or socially from either marriage. She lives in a condo my mother helped her secure, and she basically survives on my mother's social leftovers. They have this specific tone when they speak to each other, loud, fast, and intensely competitive. By 7 o'clock that night, my cousin Layla sent me a text. "Wendy, what is happening? Mom is at Aunt Cordelia's house with a bottle of wine and they are calling vendors." Layla is 26, Marjorie's daughter, and she has never quite been on her mother's shallow wavelength. We are not extremely close, but we are friendly. "They are calling vendors," I typed back. "What do you mean?" Layla replied instantly. "They are trying to threaten them, like telling them they will get bad reviews if they do not honor the original contracts," Layla wrote. I laughed out loud in my empty office. I actually laughed. You probably know how it feels when the people you trusted most are playing a different game behind your back. "Layla," I typed, "the contracts are in my name, not theirs." She replied, "I figured. They are not having a good time over here." A long pause followed. Then Layla added casually, "Have you seen the family chat lately?" I read the line twice. "What family chat?" "Oh, Wendy," Layla wrote. "They have been planning to ease you out for like 2 years." I sat very still, asking her to tell me everything. By the time Vivian rang my doorbell at 10:03, I had been home for an hour. I had been sitting on my couch with the Mont Blanc in my hand and Layla's last text on my screen. I opened the door. Vivian's mascara was halfway down her face. "Wendy, why are you doing this?" I stepped aside, and she came in, sitting on my hallway floor with her coat still on, something she had not done since she was 11. I sat across from her in the narrow space. "Vivian, did you know Mom texted me and called me low class?" "She did not mean it," she pleaded. "Vivian, she typed the words," I said. "Dad followed up with his own version. Both are on my phone." She looked at the floor. "Why did you not call me?" she asked. "Vivian, you are the bride. I was not going to call you 11 days before your wedding crying about Mom. I was going to handle it the way I handle everything," I said. "By canceling everything?" she asked. "By taking my name off contracts I signed because I thought I was helping you," I countered. "Mom decided I was not family, so I decided not to pay for family events anymore." She put her face in her hands. After a long minute, she looked up. "Wendy, did Mom really say I am worth more than you?" I considered lying, but I did not. "No, Vivian," she said. "You embarrass her less." She flinched, a reaction I had not seen since we were kids. She stood up, wiping her face with her sleeve, and looked at me. Wendy, I need to think. I am not on her side. Vivian, I love you, I told her. But you need to decide if you are on mine. Which side would you choose? She walked out, and the heavy click of the front door echoed through my quiet apartment. I just sat there on the cold hallway floor for 20 minutes, staring at nothing, letting the silence sink in. Finally, I stood up to find Vivian's laptop. She had left it at my place 2 weekends ago, busy working on table arrangement diagrams while I poured wine and set out cheese. She said she would pick it up after her menu meeting on Saturday, but Saturday came and went. It was still sitting on my entry table, buried under a stack of junk mail. I opened the lid. The screen lit up, requiring a password she never bothered to set. Her Messages app was wide open in the browser, and as I scrolled through the sidebar, the threads looked normal. There were bridesmaid chats, messages with Trent, and the dress fitter. But right at the bottom of the sidebar, a small red dot caught my eye. It was an active group thread named M and D and Marge. Mom, Dad, and Aunt Marjorie. Vivian had been added to it for some logistics question 2 weeks ago, and she had never muted it. The messages were still rolling in. I scrolled all the way to the top. The thread started in March of 2024, 2 years ago, 3 months after my 30th birthday, right after Vivian gave me my Mont Blanc pen. The very first message was from my mother. It read, "After the wedding, we need a plan to phase Wendy out. She does not need to come to every holiday." Then Aunt Marjorie replied, "She is a lot, Cordelia." Aunt Marjorie wrote, "She means well, but she is just a lot." The third message was from my father, and it cut even deeper. He wrote, "Agreed, she does not fit the picture. Let us see how the engagement goes." My knees went weak, and I sat down at my kitchen counter scrolling through the Betrayal. In September of 2024, Marjorie wrote that Beatrice asked about my business at the engagement party, adding, "We need to redirect those conversations. She is not their kind." By December, Beatrice mentioned I looked capable at the Christmas open house, and my mother wrote, "I am losing my mind." By February of 2025, they planned for me to stay home from the wedding after the rehearsal dinner with a fake work emergency, and Vivian agreed. Then came August of 2025, just last week, 8 days before my mother sent me that text. She had written, "We need to handle the wedding invitation directly with Wendy. She has to think she chose to step back." I felt completely numb. I uncapped my Mont Blanc pen, opened a fresh legal pad, and started writing down the dates. I searched the group thread for the phrase, "low class." The first hit was from Aunt Marjorie 11 months ago about a Christmas dress I had worn. The second was from my mother 6 months ago, criticizing my hair. The third was the text from this past Tuesday. I screenshotted every single message. I did not cry. I just kept writing. I could have confronted my mother that night, but I did not. I sent the screenshots to Iris Peterson, my college roommate. She is a paralegal at a divorce firm and has watched me handle worse family drama than this from a distance. Her reply came at 12:41 in the morning. "Wendy, these are receipts," she wrote. "I know," I replied. "Do not blast them. Not tonight," she wrote. "I was not going to," I answered. She texted, "They will do something stupid first. They always do. Wait for it." "I am waiting," I replied. After a pause, she sent, "And do not tell Vivian what you saw on her laptop yet." I did not tell her. I closed the laptop and slid it back under the mail. I texted Vivian, Thanks for stopping by. Love you. Talk tomorrow. She never replied. I sat on my couch with a cup of tea, considering my options. I could send the screenshots to my mother and watch her implode, but that would only feel good for an hour. I could send them to Beatrice Ashford, which would be more useful, but it felt like I was using Beatrice, and I did not want to do that. I decided to wait. Whatever happened next, my mother was going to ruin things all by herself. She always did. I went to bed at 2 a.m. and slept for 9 hours. I had not slept that well in an entire year. My mother called Beatrice on Wednesday morning. I knew this because Lila texted me at noon. Wendy, Mom is here. Cordelia called Beatrice to say you were having a mental breakdown and ruining the wedding out of spite. Oh boy, I typed back to Lila. She replied, Wendy. Beatrice's response was, quote, I would like to speak with Wendy directly. I stared at the screen, laughed out loud, and made coffee. If you have ever sat in a kitchen watching a parent completely rewrite reality in front of you in real time, drop the word rewrite in the comments below. Because my mother is about to find out that Beatrice did not get to where she is by listening to idle gossip in country club hallways. Beatrice asks questions, and then she looks at the paperwork. Beatrice's secretary called me at 4:14 that afternoon. I had been expecting it. She was incredibly warm, pleasant, and very direct. Miss Morgan, the secretary said, Mrs. Ashford would like to invite you to her home for tea on Friday afternoon at 3 if you are available. I replied, I am available. She continued, Mrs. Ashford asks that you bring any documents related to the wedding planning, like vendor contracts, receipts, whatever you have. I told her, I will bring the binder. Thank you, Miss Morgan. We look forward to seeing you Friday, she said. After hanging up, I packed the binder and made copies of everything. I made a separate manila folder with the printed group chat screenshots, clipping my Mont Blanc pen to the cover. I had 3 days to prepare. On Friday afternoon, at exactly 2:57, I arrived. The Ashford home was in an old Sacramento neighborhood I had only ever driven through. The street was lined with massive valley oaks, and the houses sat behind low picket fences. Beatrice's house was a gorgeous craftsman with a green door and a porch swing. There was no gate or doorman. It was just Beatrice, wearing a beige cardigan, holding the screen door open. Wendy, come in, the tea is hot, she welcomed me. The interior was tasteful in a way that is hard to describe if you have not seen it. Old, worn rugs instead of new ones, a bookcase stretching from floor to ceiling, a piano that was clearly used with no flashy gold trim. Above the fireplace hung a black and white photograph of a man in mechanic's overalls. She poured the tea herself. It was Earl Grey, served in real porcelain cups, with no fancy cookies on a tray, just the hot tea. Wendy, what is happening? She asked. I placed 3 sheets of paper on the small table between us. The first sheet was the master list of canceled vendors, complete with the exact dollar amounts. The second sheet was the original Cresthaven contract showing my signature and Westbrook Events as the contracting party. The third sheet was my bank statement, showing $26,000 and change paid out over 8 months from my business account to fund my mother's wedding vision. Beatrice put on a pair of reading glasses. She read each sheet slowly. She did not skim. She actually read. Beatrice looked up. Your mother told my husband at the engagement dinner that your business was, and I am quoting, a side hobby Wendy does on weekends. I replied, I employ 4 people. We did 6-figure events last year, including 2 corporate retreats and 11 weddings. Cresthaven gave us a vendor account discount because I have run 6 events at their facility. Beatrice tapped the bank statement. And this $26,000? My money, my business card, I said. Vivian asked, so I offered. I thought it was a gift, Beatrice murmured. She was silent for a long moment. Why would she tell us your business was a side hobby? Because she is worried you will find out my business is more solid than my dad's investment portfolio. Beatrice did not react dramatically. She just nodded once, then said, Vivian's wedding is in 8 days. What would you like to happen, Wendy? I had thought about this question for 3 days. I would like the wedding to happen, Mrs. Ashford. Beatrice, she corrected. Beatrice, I would like Vivian and Trent to have their day. It is not their fault. I am not the one who canceled it. My mother did when she told me I make her look low class. I would just like the Ashfords to know who actually paid for the parts that did exist. Beatrice took her glasses off. And do you want to be there? If you invite me, yes, I said. Not if my parents invite me. They told me I am not welcome. She did not pause. Consider yourself invited by me, personally. She stood up and walked to a small writing desk against the wall. She opened a drawer, pulled out a fresh place card, and picked up a slim silver pen. The pen had the same weight in her hand as my Mont Blanc has in mine. I noticed it before I even understood I had noticed it. She wrote my name in beautiful calligraphy, Wendy Morgan, and under it, Ashford Table. She handed the card to me. Wendy, I have one more question. Did your mother tell you specifically that you make her look low class? She typed it, I answered. So did my father. I have the screenshots. May I see them? I opened my manila folder and handed over the printed group chat screenshots, all of them. Beatrice sat and read for 9 minutes. She did not speak. When she finished, she folded the screenshots and put them on the writing desk. Wendy, I will see you next Saturday, she said. She walked me to the door. She did not say goodbye, but she squeezed my hand. Her grip was steady and warm. I drove home with that place card on the passenger seat, feeling a shift in the air. Over the next 4 days, my parents desperately tried to find a replacement venue. Layla kept me informed. They called Cresthaven to uncancel, but Eric politely told them the date was released to a corporate retreat. They called the Sterling Hotel and the Hyatt downtown. Both were completely booked. If you and I have learned anything, it is that karma has a way of working itself out when you least expect it. They called the Vineyard at Folsom first. Booked solid. The summer wedding season in Sacramento always fills up 8 months out, so finding a luxury venue on 11 days' notice was completely impossible. By Thursday morning, they had settled on the dreary Holiday Inn near the airport. Think fluorescent lighting, drop ceiling tiles, and a cheap buffet contract because they didn't even do plated dinners. My mother immediately emailed the extended family to spin the disaster. Her actual excuse? Due to Aunt Marjorie's hearing aid technician being closer to the airport. Lila sent me a screenshot of the email with a single laughing crying emoji. If you and I wanted to see my mother's desperation in real time, this was definitely it. The new caterer was nothing but a panic booking. Originally, the prestigious Maison Beaumont was supposed to serve upscale filet mignon. Instead, this sad Holiday Inn package was a buffet of teriyaki chicken, basic mashed potatoes, and a bland vegetarian pasta. My parents actually paid $14,000 for that buffet, simply because the hotel managers knew they were only 11 days out and totally desperate. The florist was replaced by a rushed wholesale grocery store order, just cheap white roses and baby's breath stuffed into flimsy plastic vases for about $300. The wedding cake was literally from the Costco bakery. My mother tried to spin it as a stylistic choice, calling it a return to simplicity. My father, meanwhile, lied to his friends at the country club, claiming there was a construction issue at Cresthaven. Naturally, nobody at the country club believed his lie. For the rest of the week, I went completely silent and did not contact my family. I pulled a simple navy dress I already owned from my closet and hung it where I could see it. On Friday afternoon, just 3 days before the wedding, my sister Vivian walked into my office. She wore no makeup, her hair was in a loose bun, and she looked like she hadn't slept at all. "Wendy, Mom said you went behind her back to Beatrice," she said. I closed my binder. "Beatrice invited me to tea at her house." Vivian sat down across from my desk, keeping her coat on. "Mom is saying you are trying to ruin the wedding, Vivian." I looked her dead in the eye. "I am coming to the wedding." She looked up sharply, her eyes wide with shock. "You are coming?" she asked. "Beatrice invited me personally," I replied. "She wrote out my place card herself. I am sitting at the Ashford table." Vivian's face moved through 3 quick emotions: surprise, then relief, and finally a complicated kind of fear. "Mom is going to lose it," she whispered. "Mom has been losing it since the engagement party, Vivian. You just didn't see it. I didn't see it either until this week." She frowned, asking, "What do you mean?" I considered telling her about the group chat, but decided not to. Not yet. Not before the wedding. "I mean that Mom has been calibrating for the Ashfords for 2 years, and I was the one part of the picture she couldn't figure out how to crop." Vivian's eyes filled with tears, but she held them open until they cleared. She pointed at the Mont Blanc on my desk. "Can I have it back?" she asked. I looked at her, then at the pen. "It was a gift, Vivian. From you to me for my 30th. It is mine." She nodded, not pushing or arguing. She just looked at the pen for a long second, the way you might look at something you almost broke and then realized you didn't get to break. "Wendy, I love you," she said. "I love you too," I replied. After she left, I uncapped the Mont Blanc and signed 3 contracts that afternoon. The day before the wedding, I did very little. I went to the office in the morning and signed paperwork for a new corporate retreat client. I got coffee for Hannah and told her she didn't need to come in on Saturday since she would be at her sister's barbecue. I went home at 3 o'clock. I washed my navy dress, steamed it, and laid it across my bed. I tried on a small pair of earrings, not pearl, just plain silver studs. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the dress for a long time. Hannah texted at 6 o'clock. "You okay tomorrow?" I typed back, "Best I have been in the year." She sent a heart. Then Iris messaged me at 7 o'clock. She had stopped by my apartment that afternoon and dropped off a sealed envelope at my door. Inside were 2 clean, printed copies of the group chat screenshots with a sticky note saying, "In case you need them, I am rooting for you." I slid the envelope into my clutch, went to the kitchen, and made dinner. I ate alone, watching the light leave the kitchen. At 9 o'clock, in the quiet dark, I thought to myself, low class does not pay deposits. I do. I slept 8 hours. On Saturday, at 4:07 in the afternoon, I parked in a hotel guest spot at the Holiday Inn. If you and I are being honest, those 2 beige stone columns by the entrance were trying way too hard to look like a venue and not a roadside hotel. The lobby smelled of harsh carpet cleaner, and a sign on an easel in the corporate font directed me toward Ballroom B. I walked up the concrete slope, ready for whatever came next. A directional arrow pointed down the hall, so I followed it. The carpet had a diamond pattern, and the drop ceiling tiles had ugly brown water stains in 2 places. At the entrance to Ballroom B, someone had set up a basic floral arrangement of white roses and baby's breath, grocery store quality. My mother stood at the door, wearing her engagement party dress, her pearl pin, and high heels. She was greeting cousins with her best fake social face. The second she saw me coming down the hallway, she froze mid-handshake with my cousin Brett, her hand going completely rigid in his. Brett looked totally confused. My father, standing 3 feet behind her, turned around when he saw her freeze. My father turned a shade of gray I had never seen on a living human before. Aunt Marjorie, standing near the gift table, said audibly across the hallway, "What is she doing here?" I kept walking, not looking at any of them. Suddenly, a small voice at my elbow said, "Wendy." It was Beatrice. She had walked out of the ballroom specifically to meet me. She wore a soft gray dress and tucked her arm through mine in an unmistakable gesture of solidarity. "Cordelia, Wendy is sitting with us at the Ashford table. I hope that is not a problem." My mother opened her mouth, closed it, and opened it again. "Of course," she said, the 2 syllables sounding incredibly brittle under pressure. Beatrice didn't wait for a response. She walked me past my mother into the ballroom, squeezing my arm as we crossed the threshold. The ceremony was at 4:30. The ballroom had been split with a temporary partition with chairs on one side and covered buffet stations on the other. The chairs were standard hotel issue, wrapped in cheap white covers with unevenly tied sashes. Vivian came down the makeshift aisle in her dress. The gown, at least, was beautiful, and she had paid for it herself. Up at the front, Trent waited for her. He looked incredibly steady, and I could tell by the way he watched her that he loved her deeply. If you and I ever doubted his feelings, his expression right then proved everything. He looked at her the right way. Whatever else was happening in this dysfunctional family, he was definitely the right person for her. I sat at the Ashford table near the front, with Beatrice on my right and Gerald Ashford, Trent's father, on my left. Gerald is 64, a quiet man who watches more than he talks. The officiant did a standard ceremony. Vivian read her vows, Trent read his, and they exchanged rings. The whole thing took 30 minutes. My mother kept turning her head to glare at me, and my father's jaw was locked the entire time. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," I clapped. She was my baby sister, and I loved her. Across the room, Vivian's eyes met mine, and she smiled a small, real smile. She didn't look away. Instead, she gave me a small, real smile. After the ceremony, the partition was wheeled back to reconfigure the room for the reception, and the buffet stations were uncovered under buzzing fluorescent lights. At 6:08 in the evening, the cocktail hour began. The bar was a portable hotel setup with a bartender wearing a Holiday Inn polo. The fancy signature cocktail my mother had planned was gone, replaced by cheap Chardonnay and trays of Coors Light. I stood near the bar with a glass of water as my mother marched across the room toward me, her heels clicking aggressively on the temporary dance floor. If you and I wanted to see the moment the illusion shattered, this was it. She didn't stop until she was 8 inches from my face. "How dare you?" she hissed. I didn't back away. I kept my voice completely even. "Mom, you are at a wedding. Be quiet." "You ruined this," she said, louder now. People 3 tables over started looking. "Mom, I asked you to be quiet once." "Look at this place," she hissed. "Look at what you did. Look at what your jealousy has cost this family." A calm voice behind her cut in. Cordelia. Beatrice had crossed the room with Gerald right beside her. Trent was a step behind with Vivian at his elbow. Cordelia, would you mind joining me for a moment? There is something I would like to clarify in front of the entire family. The trap was officially set. My mother turned and tried to smile, but it fell completely flat. Beatrice, we do not need to make a scene, she murmured. I agree, Beatrice said pleasantly, which is why I would like to clarify this at the family circle. The toasts are scheduled in 10 minutes anyway, so we can take care of it right now. Without waiting for my mother to agree, she walked toward the center of the ballroom. Gerald and Trent followed, leaving my mother with no choice but to tag along. I walked behind them all. A small podium and a microphone on a stand had been set up, but Beatrice ignored both. She walked into the cleared space, turned, and faced the family circle. Stick with me, because what she did next changed our lives. You know that feeling when a room suddenly shifts and you can hear a pin drop? That is what happened as 22 of my family members drifted closer, sensing a change in the air. Some held drinks, others set them down. Aunt Marjorie stood at the edge, her face looking incredibly strange. Then, Gerald Ashford tapped his glass once with a butter knife. Just once. The room went dead silent. Beatrice spoke. Her voice was not loud, but it carried because everyone was listening. She said she and her husband had spent months getting to know us, but wanted to clarify something confusing. My mother Cordelia stood with her smile at full tension, her pearl pin glinting under the harsh lights, as Beatrice quoted her directly, calling me a side hobby event coordinator who did not contribute to the wedding. My mother stammered, starting to say, "Well, you see," but Beatrice cut her off. "I am going to clarify," Beatrice said, her tone calm but completely unyielding. From a small handbag I had not even noticed her carrying, she pulled out a thick manila envelope. She explained that these were the original vendor invoices for the wedding planned at Cresthaven Manor, the very wedding that had been canceled 12 days ago. Beatrice did not open the package right away. Instead, she held it in both hands, letting everyone in our family circle stare at it. Then she looked directly at my mother and asked if she wanted to clarify what she had told her husband at the engagement dinner about my role in the planning. I watched my mother swallow hard, her throat moving in sheer panic. My mother whispered that it was just a small side thing I had helped with. Beatrice just stared at her for a very long beat before quietly saying, "All right." I stood there, not saying a single word because I did not need to. Beatrice opened the envelope and began reading the actual figures from the first page. She listed the florist, Catalina Blooms, at $7,800, catering from Maison Beaumont at $9,400. The venue, Cresthaven Manor, was $18,000. Photography was $4,200, and music was $2,800. She turned the page to reveal the total contracted value of $46,200, with prepaid deposits of over $26,000. Beatrice turned to the next sheet. She announced that the card on file for every single vendor belonged to Westbrook Events Limited, with the account holder listed as Wendy Morgan, president. She paused, letting my relatives absorb that massive revelation. She made sure they understood that I had paid for my sister's wedding out of my own business account over 8 months, spending over $26,000 of my own money. My father's face turned the color of paste, while Aunt Marjorie clutched her purse with white knuckles. Then Beatrice turned another page, reading a group chat message from July where my mother wrote that Beatrice must not see me, or she would think they came from rough stock. My mother gasped As Beatrice revealed, there were 47 similar messages. The texts detailed how they planned to phase me out gradually after the wedding was over. A heavy, suffocating silence fell over the room. Beatrice folded the page calmly. "Cordelia," she said, "let me be very clear with you. I came from a Sacramento foreclosure back in 1978. My father was a simple mechanic. I built our family real estate company alongside my husband from a single duplex. I have absolutely no patience for class theater. I never have, and I certainly cannot abide it being performed for my benefit at the expense of someone else's hard-working daughter." She then turned her gaze to the rest of our gathered family circle, her voice ringing out clearly as she repeated that I, Wendy Morgan, had paid for their daughter's entire wedding out of my own pocket. "And you told her she makes you look low class," Beatrice said. Those words landed with a heavy, sickening thud, more powerful than anything I had ever heard in my life. Aunt Marjorie sank onto a banquet chair as if her knees had completely given out under the weight of the shame. My father stood absolutely frozen, not moving, speaking, or even breathing. I remained completely silent, letting the truth hang in the air. My mother tried to speak, gasping like a drowning person fighting for air. "She offered to pay," my mother squeaked out in a high, desperate pitch. Beatrice cut her off, saying that offering $26,000 out of generosity is entirely different than being told you are an embarrassment. When my mother pleaded about family history, Beatrice shut her down instantly. If you have ever watched someone realize they are completely on their own, you know the exact look that came over my mother's face. Beatrice announced she had read everything and printed it twice. My mother turned to my father, looking for backup, but he was a stockbroker who had spent 30 years calculating risks. He calculated this one for 2 seconds and chose to say absolutely nothing. He did not look at her, and he did not look at me. He just stared at the floor. That silence is what broke her. Not the exposure, but his failure to defend her. She turned back to Beatrice, whispering that none of this was supposed to be public. Beatrice coldly replied that people think they can say one thing in private chats and another at country clubs without ever being held accountable. Beatrice declared she was holding both pages now. My sister Vivian stepped forward, her voice breaking as she confronted our mother. When my mother tried to explain, Vivian cut her off. She demanded to know why she had been lied to, why she was told that I did not want to come, that I was sick, or that I was choosing to step back. Vivian refused to listen to more lies and walked across the room to stand right next to me. She did not hold my hand, but just standing beside me was more than enough. I spoke only once at my sister's wedding, and it was not a toast. It was just 3 short sentences. I looked at my mother, whose makeup was literally melting off her face, her pearl pin crooked. I looked her in the eye and said, "Mom, you told me I make this family look low class." My voice was incredibly level. Looking back, it was probably the calmest I have ever sounded in a crowded room. I told her that she had spent 2 whole years strategizing how to make me feel like I was the one who chose to leave. But I did not choose to walk away. I simply stopped paying for people who refused to even say my name in public. I did not raise my voice. I did not pause for dramatic effect, and I did not perform for the crowd. I simply turned to my sister and told her to be happy, adding that Trent was a good person. I leaned in and gently kissed the side of her head, just like I used to do when she was 11 years old, something we had not done in 7 years. Then I turned and walked toward the door, feeling Beatrice's hand lightly brush mine as I passed. "Drive safely, Wendy," Beatrice whispered. I walked across the diamond-patterned hallway carpet, passing my cousins who stood frozen near the gift table. I walked past my father, who finally looked up at me with an entirely blank face, but I did not stop. I walked out the lobby doors, down the concrete ramp, and got into my car. I sat there for 40 seconds before starting the engine. I drove home through the warm September evening light around 6:45 in the evening, watching the pink sky over the valley oaks. I did not cry until I pulled into my driveway. I wept for 10 minutes, then went inside to make tea. By 8 in the evening, I was safe at home. I pulled my silent phone from my clutch, revealing 23 text messages and 8 missed calls. I scrolled through my phone. Hannah had texted at 6:52 in the evening asking if I was okay. Then Iris at 7:06 saying Beatrice was an absolute queen, that she loved her, and asking if I was all right. Lila texted at 7:10 saying Harrison was crying and that I was perfect. She added that Aunt Marjorie had fled 10 minutes after I did. 2 of the original Cresthaven vendors had already heard the news through the grapevine. Eric sent a message saying that whatever happened, my account was in good standing. I ignored my mother's voicemails and my father's 2 texts. I sat on my couch, sipping tea and watching the steam rise. On Tuesday, 3 days later, a small, cream-colored envelope arrived. Inside was a short note in Beatrice's handwriting. It read, "Wendy, thank you for what you did and for what you did not do. I would like to have you to tea quarterly going forward." It was signed in the same silver ink used on my wedding place card. I put the note on my refrigerator. That Sunday, Vivian texted me saying she was so sorry and finally saw the truth. I replied that I loved her but needed some time, and she told me to take as long as I needed. I put my phone down and stayed off social media for 2 full days. It was enough. 6 months later, my business, Westbrook Events, had booked 3 weddings through the Ashford Connection Network, even though Beatrice never said she was sending clients my way. She did not need to say anything. People talk. I reinvested the recovered $18,000 into hiring a second coordinator named Sia, a 24-year-old who is sharper than I was at her age. The florist deposit I lost came back within 2 months from a new corporate retreat client. My mother called once in October, but I ignored it, and my father's December holiday card was mailed back unopened. Aunt Marjorie was quietly dropped from the country club list, which I heard about over coffee. Vivian and I started meeting monthly in November, taking slow, neutral steps forward. Trent even joined us twice, proving he is a genuinely good person who wanted to make things right. Trent apologized for what he failed to see, and I assured him that I did not blame him. As promised, Beatrice and I continued to have tea quarterly, discussing business and occasionally talking about Vivian, though we never spoke about my mother. I still use the Mont Blanc pen, signing 47 new contracts with it since that night. It sits on my desk, next to the leather binder of every event I have ever planned. Status doesn't pay deposits. I do. But never again for people who refuse to say my name. If you have been with me until now, here is what I learned. The people who tell you that you make them look low class are almost always just projecting their own deepest, darkest insecurities onto you. My mother spent 30 years clawing her way up a social ladder that Beatrice Ashford did not even know existed. Her entire identity was built on fragile rungs that other people had nailed to the wall. But when I grew up and started showing real competence, when I became stronger than her flimsy setup, I became her biggest threat. She wanted to quietly push me out of the frame before anyone of Beatrice's status noticed me. But she did not discard me. I walked away on my own terms, and that is the real difference. If you have ever had to quietly hold on to the receipts your family forgot you had, Keep them safe. Some people deserve to be paid back in mirrors. Leave a comment with the word receipts, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.